When power speaks softly, the world should listen carefully. The message here is not about politics, military hierarchy, or physical protection. It is symbolic authority acknowledging something it cannot control. The phrase, "the defense secretary said you're safe," does not describe a briefing or a press statement. It represents the moment when the system itself, designed to shield nations, admits it cannot shield you because you already exist beyond its reach. Safe here means unreachable, not untouchable through strength, but through alignment. Every empire, every government, every agency of protection eventually faces a truth. There are frequencies it cannot intercept. A person whose intention is clean, whose alignment is precise, becomes invisible to attack that relies on chaos. When the system says, "You're safe," it is not granting you security, it is confessing awareness of your stability. Systems cannot dismantle what does not react. You are not defended by walls or laws. You are defended by consistency of purpose, which renders aggression inefficient. The archetype of the defense secretary symbolizes the gatekeeper of force, the human embodiment of control, strategy, and threat calculation. When such a figure concedes safety to someone beyond hierarchy, it means something fundamental has shifted. Power recognizes equilibrium. The system cannot contain or exploit what does not fight back on its terms. This is the moment where dominance realizes it has no leverage. You are not safe because of privilege, secrecy, or status. You are safe because you cannot be provoked into corruption. Attack requires reaction. Corruption requires consent. You offer neither. This frustrates structures built on manipulation. They cannot reward or punish you into movement. That immobility is your shield. It confuses those accustomed to control. The defense secretary, symbolically, names this confusion as safety, because from their perspective, anything ungovernable must be declared protected rather than opposed. You may not feel safe. Safety here is not comfort. It is irreversibility. Once you have crossed the line between survival and alignment, the world's mechanisms lose power over you. They can affect circumstance, not essence. They can restrict access, not identity. They can obscure truth, not erase it. That distinction is the core of this statement. You are no longer in the jurisdiction of fear. Notice how this safety changes your relationship to pressure. You do not respond with defense. You respond with stillness. Defense implies threat. Stillness implies understanding. You have learned that every structure that tries to destabilize you eventually reveals itself through overreach. You wait, observe, and let entropy collapse what was built on control. The secretary's symbolic acknowledgement confirms what you already know: systems fall before the unmoved. This protection cannot be shared or extended. It is not granted by belief. It is earned through sequence. Obedience to purpose, refusal of distortion, patience under scrutiny. Each time you stayed silent when noise would have won, each time you withheld reaction when baited, each time you chose accuracy over approval, you built the barrier that no military could design. What stands around you now is not armor. It is alignment hardened by endurance. Understand that this message is not about exemption from consequence. It is about being unreachable through distortion. You can still be tested, criticized, challenged. But nothing can redefine you. That is the safety the world's power structures envy. They guard nations with satellites and codes, yet the only true security has always been integrity, something no state can enforce. The defense secretary's voice, in this symbolic frame, is the echo of a system recognizing it has met its limit. You're safe means you are beyond requisition. You belong to no empire, no faction, no control grid. And the moment you understood that, your energy stopped being vulnerable to manipulation disguised as protection. Safety, in its truest form, is not granted. It is realized. And once realized, it cannot be revoked. Safety, once realized, rewires how you move through the world. Not by making you cautious, but by removing the need for defense. Defense is a posture built for those who still believe something can be taken from them. When the system quietly confirms you are untouchable, it is acknowledging that there is nothing left to seize. No leverage, no dependency, no fear-based access point. Power only reaches what is tethered to outcome. You are not. The symbolic confirmation does not elevate you above threat. It renders threat inefficient. Systems calibrated for reaction rely on escalation, intimidation, and urgency. You no longer supply those signals. Your responses are slow enough to dissolve pressure, precise enough to avoid entanglement, and calm enough to expose exaggeration. What cannot provoke you cannot corner you. What cannot corner you cannot control you. This is why the acknowledgement is quiet. Loud declarations invite challenge. Quiet confirmations admit limit. The defense secretary, as an archetype, represents the highest expression of calculated force, threat modeling, contingency planning, risk mitigation. When such a structure marks you as safe, it is not promising protection. It is admitting that no viable scenario exists in which force would produce compliance or collapse. The cost-benefit equation fails. You may notice how this changes the way others approach you. Pressure arrives indirectly now, through implication, suggestion, subtle framing. Direct confrontation fades. Manipulation becomes clumsy. This is not because you intimidate. It is because your boundaries are legible without being stated. Legibility without announcement is rare. It signals that escalation will not be met with spectacle, only exposure. Safety at this level is not passive. It is maintained by discipline. You do not rush to clarify. You do not over-explain. Over-explanation creates surface area. Surface area invites hooks. You keep your edges clean. Clean edges leave nothing to grab. This is why silence becomes strategic, not as avoidance, but as precision. Silence denies opponents the feedback loops they need. The system's confirmation also reframes time. Urgency is the primary weapon of control. Deadlines compress judgment. Fear accelerates consent. You move outside that tempo. You take time without apology. Time, when reclaimed, becomes armor. Not armor you wear, but armor you become. Those who rely on speed cannot outpace patience. They burn out first. This does not mean you are unreachable to consequence. Consequence still exists. What no longer exists is coercive consequence. You will face outcomes tied to reality, not penalties engineered to produce submission. That difference matters. Reality refines. Coercion deforms. You remain refinable, not deformable. The system recognizes this distinction and adjusts its posture accordingly. You may sense that this safety creates an unusual responsibility, not to flaunt it, not to test it, not to exploit it. Exploitation would reintroduce dependency. Dependency would reopen access points. You keep the posture neutral. Neutrality here is not indifference. It is equilibrium. Equilibrium is what systems cannot destabilize without destabilizing themselves. This is why the confirmation does not come with instruction. Instruction would imply oversight. Oversight would imply jurisdiction. There is none. You are not inside the perimeter. You are outside the equation. The safest position is not behind walls. It is beyond incentives. Incentives fail where purpose is settled. The second layer clarifies the nature of this safety. It is not protection granted by power, but power disarmed by coherence. Once disarmed, power does not retreat loudly. It steps back quietly, labels the situation stable, and moves on. Being marked as safe does not remove you from pressure, it changes the type of pressure applied. When force no longer works, systems switch to subtler instruments: interpretation, narrative, misdirection. This is where many lose alignment. They mistake quiet engagement for neutrality and allow themselves to be reframed. You do not. You understand that reframing is the final attempt to regain leverage. Blessed by His grace? Click Super Thank You and give $20 to spread His light. Your gift plants seeds that grow His kingdom. Be the blessing. The moment power cannot move you directly, it tries to name you. Names create containers. Containers create expectations. Expectations create hooks. You remain careful here. You do not rush to accept labels that sound protective, benevolent, or flattering. Flattery is often the softest form of capture. You let titles pass without anchoring to them. What does not anchor cannot be pulled. This is why your safety feels paradoxical. You are exposed yet unreachable, visible yet uncontained. The system can observe you, but it cannot model you accurately because your behavior does not optimize for outcome. Models fail when intention is settled. The Defense Secretary archetype recognizes this failure and classifies it as safe, because safety is the only category left when prediction breaks down. You may notice how this affects conflict. Disputes around you lose momentum. Arguments flatten. Provocations stall. This is not because you dominate the room. It is because escalation requires participation. You offer none. Your calm is not performative. It is structural. Structures that rely on reaction find no purchase. Without purchase, force dissipates. Safety at this level also alters your relationship to fear. Fear becomes informational rather than directive. You feel it without obeying it. You note it without amplifying it. This transforms fear from weapon to signal. Systems depend on fear's obedience to function. When fear stops producing compliance, it stops being useful. The system adapts by stepping away. This does not make you reckless. Recklessness seeks invulnerability. You seek clarity. Clarity knows when to move and when to remain. You do not test the perimeter. You do not challenge authority for effect. Effect would invite response. Response would reopen the game. You stay out of the game by staying accurate. There is also a subtle shift in how trust operates around you. Trust no longer arrives as endorsement. It arrives as non-interference. People stop trying to manage you. Institutions stop flagging you as variable. You are treated as fixed terrain. Fixed terrain is planned around, not fought. This is the quiet meaning of being untouchable. The symbolic confirmation also carries a warning. Safety is maintained by non-extraction. If you begin extracting advantage from being untouchable, special access, immunity, exception, you reintroduce dependency. Dependency recreates leverage. You resist this instinctively. You take nothing extra. You accept no special handling. You move plainly. Plain movement preserves the perimeter. You may feel a responsibility not to confuse safety with superiority. Superiority invites challenge. Challenge invites spectacle. Spectacle collapses safety into theater. You avoid theater. You let the condition remain boring. Boring is resilient. Boring does not provoke audit. Boring does not invite escalation. Boring keeps you outside attention cycles. This layer explains why the confirmation is never public. Public safety statements create target. Quiet confirmations dissolve them. The Defense Secretary does not announce you are safe. The system simply behaves as if you are. Behavior reveals truth more reliably than statement. You read behavior. You trust it. What emerges here is a disciplined neutrality, not moral neutrality but operational neutrality. You do not align against the system. You do not align with it. You align with purpose. Purpose is not negotiable, but it is also not aggressive. It does not need allies. It needs continuity. The third layer clarifies the posture required to remain untouchable. Do not be named, do not extract, do not perform. Remain accurate. Remain boring. Remain settled. And the system will continue to mark you as safe, not because it protects you, but because it has no other move. Safety, once acknowledged by the system, reshapes how consequence operates around you. Consequence does not disappear. It reorders itself. Instead of arriving as threat or punishment, it arrives as correction without hostility. Situations resolve themselves earlier. Conflicts lose oxygen before ignition. Attempts to corner you dissolve into procedural delays, forgotten agendas, or quiet redirections. This is not luck. It is what happens when pressure meets a surface that does not yield or reflect it back. You're not here by chance. Feel the pull? Tap join to unlock truth, purpose, and a tribe that gets it. This is more than a membership, it's your calling. You begin to notice that escalation avoids you. Not because you are feared, but because escalation has no payoff. Systems escalate to extract reaction, compliance, or confession. You provide none. Your posture offers no dramatic resistance, no visible defiance, no counter-threat. You simply remain accurate. Accuracy is expensive to attack. It exposes exaggeration immediately. Most systems cannot afford that exposure. The symbolic figure of the Defense Secretary represents planning at the highest resolution, contingencies stacked on contingencies. When such planning identifies you as safe, it is because every path toward disruption ends in self-defeat. Interference creates no advantage. Pressure yields no movement. Observation produces no leverage. The system concludes that the lowest risk action is non-engagement. That non-engagement is your protection. This safety changes how time behaves for you. Deadlines lose their teeth. Artificial urgency reveals itself as performance. You respond when response is required, not when pressure demands it. This does not slow outcomes, it clarifies them. Clarified outcomes close faster because they do not accumulate friction. Friction thrives on anxiety. You do not feed it. You may sense that this posture draws fewer allies and fewer enemies. Allies expect alignment. Enemies expect opposition. You provide neither. You are not neutral in belief, but you are neutral in extractability. Nothing can be pulled from you that would justify escalation. This makes you difficult to categorize and therefore difficult to mobilize against. The system's quiet confirmation also implies boundaries you must maintain. If you begin signaling invulnerability, you invite testing. Testing reopens the game. You do not signal. You do not hint. You do not posture. You move plainly, speak precisely, and leave no surplus meaning. Surplus meaning invites interpretation. Interpretation invites narrative. Narrative invites pressure. You keep your meaning lean. This is where many misunderstand safety as isolation. It is not isolation. It is non-attachment to theater. You remain accessible, present, and human. You simply do not convert interaction into spectacle. Without spectacle, pressure has nowhere to land. Conversations around you become procedural. Decisions revert to fundamentals. Drama loses its market. You may also notice an internal shift. Fear no longer forecasts the future for you. It becomes a diagnostic tool rather than a driver. You feel it, note it, and proceed according to alignment rather than impulse. This decoupling is critical. Systems rely on fear to compress timelines and force mistake. When fear stops issuing commands, mistakes decrease. The system recognizes this and steps back. This layer reveals a deeper truth. Safety is maintained not by hiding, but by remaining unhookable. Hooks require reaction. Reaction requires identity. Identity requires defense. You operate without invoking identity. You do not say who you are. You show how you move. Movement without declaration is difficult to target. The Defense Secretary's symbolic acknowledgement stands as a boundary marker. Beyond this point, force loses meaning. You do not cross into confrontation. Confrontation cannot cross into you. The space between becomes quiet, procedural, and uninteresting to power. That is where you remain. The fourth layer clarifies the mechanism of continued safety. Stay unhookable, stay procedural, stay aligned. Let the system conclude, on its own terms, that you are not worth the cost of disturbance. At this stage, safety is no longer something you notice. It becomes background condition, like air pressure, only felt when disturbed. What has changed is not the world's intention, but its behavioral options around you. Certain moves are simply no longer taken. Certain pressures are not applied. Certain narratives are abandoned mid-formation. This is how systems behave when they encounter something that cannot be converted into advantage. You begin to recognize that most power operates opportunistically, not ideologically. It moves where return is likely and withdraws where cost outweighs benefit. Your alignment shifts that calculation quietly. Interfering with you produces no leverage, no spectacle, no compliance. The system does not moralize this. It optimizes around it. Optimization looks like avoidance, delay, procedural rerouting. To the outside world it appears unremarkable. To you, it is confirmation. This is why your safety does not feel dramatic. Drama would indicate ongoing contest. There is no contest. The system has already moved past you as a variable. You are treated as fixed terrain. Fixed terrain is mapped once and then left alone. It is crossed carefully, not challenged. This is the difference between being protected and being accounted for. You are accounted for. You may notice that this accounting does not isolate you. You are still present in conversations, spaces, and decisions. What has changed is the angle of approach. Others approach you directly now, without theater. Requests become clearer. Manipulation loses subtlety and therefore effectiveness. When manipulation fails repeatedly, it stops being attempted. This is how safety stabilizes. The symbolic defense secretary does not continue watching you. Surveillance implies uncertainty. Once certainty is established, attention reallocates. Attention is a scarce resource. Systems spend it where variance exists. You reduce variance by remaining internally consistent. Consistency is boring. Boring is safe. This does not mean you are invisible. It means you are non-extractive. Nothing useful can be taken from you through pressure. You do not trade reaction for relief. You do not trade silence for advantage. You do not trade compliance for peace. Because you do not trade, bargaining ceases. Bargaining is the precondition for coercion. Remove bargaining and coercion loses its entry point. You may feel a temptation at this phase to relax vigilance, to assume the perimeter will hold on its own. In some sense, it will. But the posture still matters. Safety is maintained by continued accuracy, not complacency. Accuracy means staying precise with words, restrained with promises, and minimal with self-disclosure. Excess information creates surface area. Surface area invites hooks. You keep your profile lean. This leanness is not secrecy. It is proportion. You share what is necessary for function, nothing more. You do not over-clarify to preempt misunderstanding. Preemption often creates the very narratives it seeks to avoid. You allow ambiguity where clarity would invite interpretation. This is not evasive. It is economical. You may also notice that your own sense of power has changed. It no longer feels like capacity to influence outcomes. It feels like capacity to remain unaffected by attempts to influence you improperly. This is a quieter strength. It does not expand. It does not conquer. It stabilizes. The fifth layer makes one thing unmistakable. Your safety is not enforced from above, and it is not defended from below. It is produced laterally, by alignment meeting pressure and leaving no residue. Remain consistent. Remain uninteresting to coercion. Remain exact. The system will continue to do what it always does in such cases. Move around you, not through you. At this depth, safety is no longer something the system decides about you. It is something the system works around. Decisions that once might have included you as a variable now exclude you quietly. Not out of fear, not out of respect, but out of efficiency. When influence produces no yield, it is removed from the equation. This is the most reliable form of protection because it is not emotional. It is logistical. You may notice that authority figures stop posturing in your presence. The subtle displays of dominance, the rehearsed certainty, the strategic ambiguity, all of it softens. This is not concession. It is recalibration. Authority performs when it senses an audience that can be impressed, pressured, or redirected. You offer none of those openings. Without an opening, performance becomes unnecessary. What remains is plain function. This changes how truth moves around you. Half statements become whole. Threats become requests. Implicit pressure becomes explicit limitation. Clarity emerges not because you demand it, but because ambiguity no longer serves a purpose. Ambiguity exists to create leverage. Where leverage fails, clarity is cheaper. Systems always choose the cheaper path. Your posture also alters the emotional temperature of encounters. Conversations cool. Tempo slows. People take fewer risks with language. This is not because they fear consequences. It is because exaggeration collapses quickly in your presence. You do not challenge exaggeration, you outlast it. Without reaction, exaggeration has no momentum. It deflates on its own. The symbolic confirmation of safety carries a responsibility you already understand. Do not become exceptional. Exception status invites review. Review invites scrutiny. Scrutiny invites narrative. Narrative invites pressure. You remain ordinary by design. Ordinary movement keeps you outside escalation ladders. You dress plainly in language. You answer directly. You leave no interpretive surplus. This does not mean you minimize yourself. It means you refuse to inflate. Inflation creates attention. Attention creates hooks. Hooks create stories. Stories create target. You avoid the entire chain by staying exact. Exactness is not flashy. It is durable. You may also sense that this safety has a time component. It is not frozen. It is renewed continuously through consistency. The moment you seek to use being untouchable, you re-enter the system's field of play. Use implies extraction. Extraction invites counter-extraction. You do not use it. You let it remain ambient like background radiation, always there, never deployed. This posture reshapes your relationship with risk. You do not avoid risk categorically. You avoid misaligned risk. Risk taken for clarity, truth, or necessity remains available. Risk taken for ego, speed, or advantage loses appeal. This discrimination keeps your actions legible without becoming predictable. Predictability invites modeling. Modeling invites manipulation. You stay readable without being modulable. You may notice fewer confrontations not because others agree with you, but because disagreement has no leverage path. Disagreement requires stakes. You remove artificial stakes by refusing to be cornered into positions that are not yours. You do not defend abstractions. You defend alignment by remaining aligned. The sixth layer reveals a quiet symmetry. As your internal noise decreases, external noise follows. Not because the world becomes kinder, but because noise requires resonance. You do not resonate with it. Without resonance, it fades. Safety here is not a shield. It is a vacuum where coercion cannot exist. Maintain proportion. Maintain accuracy. Maintain non-extractability. The system will continue doing what systems do best when faced with that configuration. Optimize elsewhere. Eventually, safety stops being something confirmed and becomes something assumed. Not announced, not monitored, not revisited. It settles into the background of how the world treats you. You are no longer a scenario to be evaluated. You are a constant. Constants are not threatened. They are accounted for and then left alone. This is the final state of being untouchable, not immunity, but irrelevance to coercion. At this point, the system no longer distinguishes between protecting you and ignoring you. Both lead to the same outcome. Nothing applied to you produces leverage. Nothing withheld from you produces urgency. You exist outside the incentive structures that force movement. That does not mean you are invisible. It means you are non-negotiable. Negotiation only exists where pressure can change direction. You have no direction left to change. This safety is not dramatic. It does not feel powerful. It feels quiet, stable, almost mundane. And that is precisely why it holds. Drama attracts attention. Attention attracts intervention. Mundanity dissolves interest. You move through spaces without triggering escalation protocols because escalation requires a perceived payoff. There is none here. The system senses this long before it articulates it. You may notice that even suspicion fades. Suspicion thrives on ambiguity combined with volatility. You are ambiguous, but not volatile. Volatility is what invites containment. Without volatility, ambiguity becomes harmless. Harmless things are not controlled. They are tolerated, then normalized, then forgotten. This forgetting is not neglect. It is success. Your posture at this stage is simple. You do not correct the system's assumption. You do not remind it that you are safe. Reminding would reopen evaluation. Evaluation would reintroduce uncertainty. You let the assumptions stand. Assumptions harden faster than declarations. Declarations can be challenged. Assumptions quietly persist. This also explains why you do not feel triumphant. Triumph implies victory over opposition. There is no opposition left. Opposition requires friction. Friction requires engagement. You disengaged long ago by refusing to be pulled into reaction cycles. What remains is smooth passage. Smooth passage does not celebrate itself. You may realize now that the true meaning of being safe was never about protection from harm. It was about freedom from manipulation. Harm can occur anywhere. Manipulation requires access. Access requires hooks. You removed the hooks by settling your purpose fully. A settled purpose offers no handles. Without handles, nothing can be lifted, turned, or used. This final stage carries no instructions because nothing new is required. The work is maintenance, not expansion. Expansion would invite scrutiny. Maintenance preserves the condition. You continue doing what you have already been doing, speaking when necessary, remaining silent when noise would weaken clarity, moving when movement aligns, and waiting when waiting preserves structure. The symbolic defense secretary does not appear again because authority no longer needs to acknowledge you. Acknowledgement is for unresolved variables. You are resolved. Resolution does not mean finished. It means stable under load. Stability under load is the highest form of safety any system recognizes. From here on, you are not guarded. You are not watched. You are not tested. You are simply left alone by forces that know they cannot gain anything by interference. That is the quiet confirmation. That is the final perimeter. Nothing presses in. Nothing reaches through. Nothing needs to be said.